$1,500 for the base model with no controller, and over $2,000 if you want a decent amount of storage and a controller to use with it. Yes, the one and only Gaben has announced the price of his Gabe Cube, or the Valve Steam Machine, whatever you want to call it. I knew the RAM prices weren't going to be good for Gaben's Cube, but I thought for sure $1,000. It is actually double that. With Gaben's Cube being so expensive, I want to try and build my own. Here's the plan. We build Gaben's Steam Machine. I have 1 day to do it because I'm supposed to publish this on Monday. We need to use existing parts I already have because I don't have time to buy stuff, and I want the entire thing to be worth less than $200 to 1/10 the price of Gaben's Cube. And of course our cube needs to run SteamOS and get good performance in PC games. Obviously these are tight restrictions that are going to cause some compromises, but we're going to build Gaben's Cube in the next 24 hours. Now, Gaben managed to make his cube a very impressive 6 inches. I went to the motherboard pile to see what I had and very quickly realized this would simply not be possible. Even a small computer motherboard like this is already like 10 inches. That can't fit in a 6-inch cube. Now my next thought was micro PC, but I can't even put a graphics card in this. That was going to be boring. And that's when I decided my best option was to hollow out the corpse of a Dell Optiplex. Look at how small that motherboard is. Now I will admit it's looking like the cube is going to be 8 inches, not 6 inches, but this will let us put a graphics card in this computer and play games on it without buying any hardware, so I call this a win. So with the dimensions figured out, we are slightly scaling up Gaben's cube. I got working on designing it. Initially, I planned on 3D printing the entire cube, but since I plan to build this in one singular day, that was not going to work. There's no way I'm designing the entire cube and printing it in 24 hours. So I decided to build Gaben's cube out of steel. Yes, I turned what I was working on for my 3D printed design into a sheet metal design. And this is what I came up with. We'll get to this front part later. Let's focus on the steel cube for now. So the metal shell is plasma cut 20 gauge mild steel. After it was cut out, I bent it into the cube shape, and then it was ready to have the corners welded to hold itself together. And by this, I mean I had my dad do that and then did one weld so it looked like I did it too. And that left me with this metal cube with no way of attaching anything to it. So it was time to weld in some studs for the motherboard. The plan with these is to put some little plastic spacers on the studs so I can slide the motherboard in there and bolt it down. Now I will admit this is a little bit of a weird design. The motherboard actually hangs off the top of it upside down. But doing that was going to make it a lot easier to get the motherboard in there and still have room for the power supply and the graphics card. And since this thing is slightly scaled up, I had room for a full-size ATX power supply and a decent graphics card. So motherboard there, power supply here, and graphics card somewhere over here. So I realized I should probably test the computer hardware before I build it into the cube, so let's do that. Also, I cannot change the CPU with this motherboard in the cube, so it's time to get our CPU installed. The CPU being an Intel Core i7-4790, which yes, is quite old, but to that I say we're doing this on a $200 budget. I'm also going to take out this RAM and match what the real Steam Machine has and put 16 gigs in here. On the steel cube I've designed, the PCIe port is not exactly in the same place it would be on a real case, so I have a PCIe riser cable to plug in our graphics card. And that graphics card being a Radeon RX 5500 XT, which I picked because it was very cheap. And then for storage, we can put any SATA SSD in here. This is a 1 terabyte Western Digital drive. I'm using a 750 watt power supply, which is very overkill for this, but it's the one I have. I'll worry about getting SteamOS when the cube is done, but for now, there's all of the hardware working as intended, and I fired up a game which we can see what our performance is like. I know the starting point here is an old Dell Optiplex, but it's pretty hard to complain about over 100 frames per second when you're getting your computer hardware for this cheap. This graphics card I bought for 50 bucks. The entire Optiplex was 50 bucks. There's 100, you need an SSD and a power supply, and that's it. That's the whole thing. And with the system pretty much maxed out here, we're only drawing 200 watts. This thing is actually pretty efficient. I'm pretty happy with that. We'll test more games after we get this thing built into the cube. Motherboard is in the cube. To get the graphics card mounted, I have taken the original bracket. It used to come this way and I just made it flat. That way I can just get it lined up with the hole here and use some bolts and nuts to actually attach it. Power supply should be pretty straightforward. I should be able to just slide it in from the side and screw it in at the back. And that's like all of the major stuff already. Our back panel is fully complete. I have just realized I've been scraping this around on the table and I am scratching the paint. Okay, but look at that rear panel though. That actually looks pretty professional. I'm super happy with that. Now, does the computer still work after being installed in the cube? Computer still works and the entire computer is inside my knockoff Gabe Cube Steam machine. Let's do the front panel. This is what I came up with for the front panel. The original Steam machine does have the USB ports turned 90 degrees, so they're this way, but come on, that looks pretty good. And this uses the stock USB board from the Optiplex. I also got the Optiplex's power button in here. The mechanism on it is a little bit sketchy. This is 3D printed, there's a standoff. This is the original plastic from the button, and then the front panel. It's a little weird, but it does work. And then of course I printed this clear strip that I can shine a blue light through, so it will look like that thing. So for this to work, I just need to make the wires for the power button longer and the wires for the USB ports longer. And then it would be nice to also stick a fan in there. I have not really considered how that's going to work yet. Just like the real Steam machine, there is a gap between the front panel and the body, so air can go in there, and then if I could mount the fan here, it could blow it into the rest of the computer. That's the idea, at least. Wire extension has been achieved. I definitely would have preferred to get an LED strip with more than 3 LEDs on it. This would look better if it had more lights, but this is what I have, so I'm going to glue this on, glue the USB ports in, and then we can try out the cube. I think it should be done. You also might have noticed, I didn't actually build a bottom to my Steam machine, but we're not too worried about that. This is the completed Steam machine. I think it's time to try it out. On my screen, the output of my DIY Gabe Cube is completely normal. For some reason, the screen capture is green. I'm just going to continue and hope that that resolves itself later. And since I have installed SteamOS, and by that I mean Bazzite Linux, I don't even have a keyboard plugged in. I am going to do all of this just with a controller. So we shall set up our time zones and our internet connection. Apparently that was it, and we just have to wait now. In the meantime, I will talk about my cube. I think it came together really well considering what I built it out of and in what time period I built it. Like, it looked pretty good. A couple things that could be better. This is the bottom surface of this print. That's why it's a little bit ugly. If I wanted to make it look way nicer, I need to flip it over while I'm printing it. That would make that a lot better. And then down here, the LED strip kind of sucks, I'm not gonna lie. I think the color's good, but I needed more lights than that, or to have it spread out more somehow. But that is something I could fix by just getting a different LED strip with more lights on it. I'm really happy with how the power button turned out. I think that looks very good, and my front USB ports do work with my custom extension. I've got my controller connected right now, and that's what I've been using to set this up. I know the dimensions aren't the same as an actual Steam machine, but I think this thing came out pretty good, and I like it. This is my first experience with SteamOS. I'm going to install a ton of these games, and we're gonna see how easy it is to make them work. Like, is all of this stuff just going to work out of the box, or is it gonna require tweaking? I have to say the Steam interface for controller is pretty polished now. I haven't used this since before they upgraded Big Picture. It's a lot better. Okay, we have 100 gigabytes left. What is the most modern game I can put in 100 gigabytes? We're not doing Far Cry 6. For my very first time playing a game on SteamOS, I'm going to start with Portal. Okay, this is pretty cool. I'm in the quick settings menu and you can set the performance overlay in here. We can have little frame rate counter, or this bar, or a bunch of details, or all of the details. I'm gonna leave it on this one for now. So we're at 1080p, all high settings, no VSync, 4x multi-sample anti-aliasing, and no vertical sync, no motion blur. That did not take me very long. Anyways, pretty hard to complain about a solid 300 frames per second. I mean, yeah, it's an old game, but it's 300 frames per second. And remember, this isn't a super powerful computer. The graphics card in here was $50 used, and the entire rest of the computer with the CPU was a $50 Dell Optiplex. I'd say we're doing pretty good. Let's try another game. I will say, I think my Steam machine is probably definitely louder than the original. I did stick that second fan in front, but the entire cube is pretty warm. I do think that the airflow design is working. Air should be going in through this channel and out through the power supply and the graphics card holes. I might want to invest in a bigger fan though. I just stuck the little one from the Optiplex in there. I think now we try a game that's less likely to be a seamless experience. I'm going to try and play Just Cause 4. This is a game that's going to require a lot more power than Portal, and I'm pretty sure it was only ever optimized for Windows. Let's try for 1080p medium settings on this one. Well, I'm officially impressed. I think I could have put the settings even higher. This is getting 140 frames per second. On Linux, there is no Windows on this computer. This is all SteamOS. I did no configuration, and it's just running perfectly. Again, I will remind you, this is 1/10 the price of the Steam machine. This is a $50 graphics card. This is pretty good. Let's go for it. Modern AAA game, Cyberpunk 2077. We're not gonna max this one out, but we're gonna see how close we can get. I'm just gonna try the Steam Deck preset and see how this goes. Let's run a benchmark. So far, we're looking at between 50 and 80 frames per second, average frame rate of 62.7. I continue to be impressed by these 4th gen Core i7s. This is an old CPU, and we were still graphics limited. BeamNG is an interesting one. I don't know if this is going to run the Windows version or the Linux version. All I did was click play in SteamOS. It does look like it's using Vulkan instead of DirectX 11, which it would not do by default if you were playing it on Windows. Wow, 1%. You know what? I'm just going to skip that and see what happens. I'm thinking the performance here is probably pretty on par with the Steam Deck, so I'm going to once again use the Steam Deck profile. If you've been watching the car series, this is pretty much as close as you can get to the car I've been building in BeamNG Drive. Although the BeamNG car has a 1.8 liter engine, it's slightly more powerful than mine. And would you look at that, 95 frames per second on the Steam Deck graphics profile, 1080p. It's pretty hard to complain about that. You can totally play all kinds of games on this computer. I want to see, let's crank this up to high settings. This is on high settings now, and we're still getting 60 to 70 frames per second. Pretty sweet. The DIY Gabe Cube is complete. Every single game I opened worked pretty well, and the computer looks like the Steam machine, just slightly bigger. I don't even need to test anything else. Everything has just worked. I'm really happy with how this turned out. It is a little bit loud. I'm thinking fixing that though is as simple as lifting this up, putting 2 fans on the bottom blowing up because the bottom is still open, and then air will come out the back and the front, and I think that would make it a lot better. And the best part about all of this, 1/10 the price of the high-end Steam machine, not $2,000. This entire thing is worth less than $200. I'm not lying when I say I bought that graphics card for $50. Sure, I will admit it's not as powerful as the real Steam machine, but I'd say we're on par or better than the Steam Deck. And at this price, and building it in one day, remember, I think we did pretty good. All of this is standard computer hardware too. Those motherboard mounts fits any ATX board. So if you wanted this to be more powerful, it's as simple as spending more money on the computer parts. So potential future improvements, possibly a newer platform with a newer CPU, more LEDs on the light bar, that could definitely be improved, and cooling. It could definitely run cooler and quieter. Anyways, my Steam machine is complete. If you like this video, get subscribed, watch some of the other ones. I've been posting twice a week recently. And yeah, hit me up if you want a custom Steam machine case. Anyways, thank you for watching. Until next time.